Clinical studies that have been done on different dietary programs, including low-carb diets and low-fat vegan and vegetarian diets, as well as low glycemic load diets, Mediterranean diets, and just healthful patterns. And there are even some studies on what we call the Paleolithic diet now. And basically what they concluded is that actually we know very little about what's actually working across these diets, but what we do know quite clearly is that actually there are some commonalities across these. We limit refined starches, added sugars, get rid of processed foods. We limit certain unhealthful fats. We emphasize whole plant foods. And there's with or without a little bit of lean meat, fish, poultry, and seafood. And what does that add up to? Well, Michael Pollan's philosophy, and that is that we should be eating traditional whole food, not too much, mostly plants. So there are some sort of deep truths within the science. One of the dietary patterns that's been best studied for its health effects is something we call the traditional Mediterranean diet, and that is basically a model for what traditional minimally processed eating is. It's lots of vegetables, fruits, seasonal things, whole grains, a bit of olive oil, a little bit of red wine if you want it, and not too much red meat. That's kind of what a Mediterranean diet is. So it's applicable to everyone, and in fact the Mediterranean dietary pattern has been studied all around the world, and this report here in the British Medical Journal looked at all the studies that have been done and pulled them together in what we call a meta-analysis. And what they found was no matter what continent you're on, no matter what culture you come from, no matter what genetic background, the closer you eat towards this traditional minimally processed pattern, the less risk you have for developing the major chronic diseases in our society today, including Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, cardiovascular disease, cancers, you name it. So, diet is powerful and it has really important effects across cultures, across geographical boundaries. And one of the areas I want to focus on just briefly as an example of how powerful diet is heart disease. And the reason I want to pick heart disease is because it's the major killer in our society. It's the major cause of death and disability. It's estimated that in the United Kingdom there are 180,000 deaths sort of annually, and it accounts for 1 of all 3 premature deaths in our society. So I've done a little bit of work in this area. I've contributed to a textbook recently, and me and Deanna Minnick wrote a chapter on healing the heart with whole foods, which is for me a privilege to be involved in this project. But one thing we found once we sort of dug into this, and we looked at I think around 400 different references and pulling this chapter together, is that it just becomes crystal clear when you dig through the science. Actually, we have a solution for heart disease. It's called food. Its effects are incredibly powerful. In fact, it was shown about 30 years ago that you can reverse heart disease and take people off transplant lists by just changing their diet. Dr. Dean Ornish did that.